EOS is trailblazing a new trail in the world of fractional governance. A small win is a concrete, complete, implemented outcome of moderate importance. By itself, one small win may seem unimportant. A series of wins at small but significant tasks, however, reveals a pattern that may attract allies, deter opponents, and lower resistance to subsequent proposals. Small wins are controllable opportunities that produce visible results. Karl E. Weick, University professor at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. The history of governance for mankind has mostly been a fight between the group efficiency of centralization's top-down leadership versus the group equity of decentralization's theoretical mutually beneficial for all. It often gets lost in the weeds on what intent an institution, organization, or community is trying to accomplish. And this fact alone has probably never been more so true in the search for balance, as it relates to human-governed organizations. In this video I intend to explore the questions, number 1 why decentralization, and number 2 how much of it is necessary for a mutually beneficial community to potentially thrive. Okay, now let's get started.
Disclaimer: crypto investments are highly speculative and involve significant risk of loss. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Always do your own research and invest wisely.
Okay, now before we begin, I think it's important for me to first define the terms and language that I will be going over in this video. Far too often, especially in the world of crypto, the word decentralization is thrown around as a buzzword, when in actual reality, in many cases the way most crypto communities apply decentralization bears very little resemblance to the original word or concept in question. So, that we're all on the same page, the Merriam-Webster definition of decentralization is the dispersion or distribution of functions and powers, a decentralization of powers specifically, in government, the delegation of power from a central authority to regional and local authorities. First question: why decentralization? And why exactly is decentralization so important as it relates to human governance? Well, to first answer this question, I think it's important to look at the myriad of examples that we have right before our eyes. In the world of social media, take the recent controversies with the world's current reigning king of podcasts, Joe Rogan. For those of you that are unaware of the ongoing friction that Joe Rogan apparently seems to be having with his current distributor Spotify, Joe Rogan has recently ruffled a great many feathers with the current powers that be, with his highly viewed interviews with doctors and scientists that have counter opinions to the current mainstream publicized narrative, on the current efficacies on recently produced vaccines, and the supposed settled science on such subjects, and whether their mandatory use is ethical or even constitutional. In a society that theoretically guarantees free speech, this should not pose a problem, whether or not people have opposing opinions or beliefs to the current publicly accepted views. But as we can see, this is not the case, and unfortunately for Mr. Joe Rogan, the character attacks against him have already begun by mainstream forces that hold opposing opinions. This is not a political video. I care little on whether you personally believe the man is right or wrong about the subject matter. What's important to me is that, in a society that supposedly guarantees free speech, it is pretty clear that some speech is more freer than others, depending on what current narratives that mainstream forces wish to propagate to the masses. This of course is problematic. After all, if one cannot hear the opposing views, how can one make accurate or educated decisions, even about the most basic of things? So back to the earlier question, why decentralization? This example is why, in a decentralized society, theoretically no one party would have the full control or power to shut down another voice simply because they don't like what is being said. And yes, I know, it's so easy to say that some speech doesn't deserve to be heard, because it is controversial, but ask yourself honestly, if that is the measure of every controversial opposing view, then how would that have affected the course of human history, throughout the last centuries or even millennia? Oftentimes radical or opposing views are responsible for pushing the envelope for human advancement, and I would even say arguably it is necessary to have one's personal views examined and questioned by skeptical opponents, because in doing so this would likely create one or two scenarios. Number 1, the awakening of the person in question to the fact that his or her personal views are incorrect, or number 2, an increase in awareness that their views are accurate. I personally don't have a problem with opposing views, but I do have a problem with is when someone tries to shut down discussion and debate on any opposing views that is not in line with their own, especially if that someone or something has the control or influence of government resources. Second question, how much decentralization is necessary for a mutually beneficial community to potentially thrive? This question in particular at first glance looks deceptively easy to answer, but as the saying goes, the devil is always in the details. I'm sure this is probably reflexively simple to answer, for anyone that has been in the crypto world for any length of time, which their answer would likely be, 100% decentralization is the metaphorical golden city on a hill, and that arguably utopia can be brought about due to 100% complete decentralization. Thankfully that has been addressed recently with the creation of the EOS Network Foundation, Eden on EOS, and the triumphant greater involvement of Daniel Larimer himself, in his personal company Fractional. I personally believe we are still in the early days of consolidation of new authority in power, but I expect to see great things coming from these new EOS mainnet-based institutions in future. But back to my original question, how much decentralization is actually necessary to achieve optimal balance of having enough mutually beneficial decentralization for the sake of individuals in the community, but at the same time having enough centralization in the area of leadership to be able to get things done and lead the community towards new collectively beneficial pathways? This is arguably the age-old question, almost like saying what came first, the chicken or the egg. And my honest answer is I don't know, and honestly, I don't think anyone truly knows the answer to this question, which is why experimentation, flexibility, and adaptability is so important in the world of blockchain. An EOS mainnet is most certainly equipped with all of the basic tools to explore and find the answer to this most fundamental problem, which of course is finding the most optimal solution for human decentralized governance, and arguably EOS mainnet is currently the only blockchain community that is truly trying to answer this question in any real significant way. I do not believe it is an overstatement to say that when all is said and done, this may turn out to be one of the most significant contributions to human society since the invention of democracy, if we are able to solve this problem, but ultimately only time will tell. To all EOS holders, the future could be decentralized governance.
Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Also, if you would like to read, listen to, or watch more of this kind of content, please visit us at www.cryptoapologetics.com. See you next time. Take care.